how to make money in lawn care. How do you do it? Step one, route density. Route density. Make sure you've got a tightly wound route, meaning cluster a lot of your properties close together. This way, you can minimize the amount of time you're driving from property to property, not making any money. Because if you're driving between properties, the more time you're spending doing that, the less money you're making. Now, it might sound kind of hypocritical coming from me today, because this is the day that I'm driving all around town. But today is going to be kind of a short day. A couple of my properties haven't grown any, and so they're getting skipped. And then I have another couple of properties that, for whatever reason, I'm not going to cut today. I'm going to come in a different day and cut them. And I've got rain on the forecast for the day. There's a 50 or 60% chance of rain today. So I'm getting out. I'm going to try to make the most of what the time I have. I may have an hour, or I may have 5 hours. I don't know. You never can tell in this business. But like I said, route density. Number one key thing is route density. Also, you want to make sure your prices are, you don't want to price yourself out necessarily, but you also don't want to be the cheap guy. You want to charge a fair and a good price for your services. And make sure that you're making a profit on your work. And you'll have to run numbers for yourself. I can't give you my numbers. They won't necessarily work for you. And your numbers wouldn't necessarily work for me. There's a lot of variables in that, but you need to figure out what those numbers are, and then figure out how to achieve that baseline, whether it's a price per day, like if you're working landscape jobs, price per day point you're trying to hit, or a dollars per hour that you have to accumulate, whichever way you're working with that. You need to find out what that is, and then bid your jobs according to that. And you'll get some, you won't get some. Some people won't want to pay what you're asking. And some people will gladly pay it. Some people might pay more. That's kind of how it is in this business. It seems like most people at least have one shot at being successful. And don't waste your shot, because the older you get, the harder it is to pull this off. This business is a game. It's a game for the young. It's a business for the young. And the older you get, the closer you get to 30, the closer you get to 40, 50 even, especially. I'm 36. I'll be 37 here in a month or so. And just speaking for me, I can feel my body's not as strong as it was 5 years ago. It's certainly not as strong as it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when I first started cutting grass. I started working with Charlie back in 2003, and that was 21 years ago. And let me tell you, 21 years ago, I could cut grass all day and not be tired. Today, I get tired a lot easier than I did back then. I'm still able to work. Don't get me wrong. I'm still rolling, but not like I was in my teens and 20s. Once you get to be about 30, 31, 32, for me it was about 34, 35, but for most people 30 to 31 is when you really start to feel it. But like I said, don't waste your shot, because most people I've seen, there are exceptions. I've seen exceptions to this, but for the most part, you got your shot and that's it. Once you have your shot, you either make it or you don't, and then you gotta fall into some job, you got to get a job or do something that you hate, you know. And I've seen people do this too, give up on their dream, and then they're stuck in some dead end place, and they don't like it, you know. Whether they're drinking to absolve the pain or whatever, you know, or they just talk about the glory days, the old days when everything was great, you know, and they can't get out of that rut. And don't do that. Don't get stuck in that rut. I'm like I said, I've seen it both ways, but more often than not, I've seen it be that way. So let's see. I think I kind of got off on a tangent there. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, successful in business, in lawn care, pricing and route density. The way I learned this is especially about route density. I had the gentleman I started working with, Charlie. He, unfortunately for him, he did not do this. He built his business. He was working at another job, so he had a side business, but he did not believe in a clustered route. He had property spread out all over town. And the problem with that is, depending on your region, in DFW, the DFW region is massive. It's one of the biggest in the country. So if you're doing properties, let's say, for example, you're doing yards in Carrollton, and then you go over to Plano to try to cut yards, and then you have a yard in Flower Mound, and then you have a yard in Farmers Branch, and then you have a yard in Dallas. I mean, you're gonna spend half of your day driving, because it's that far away. Each town is that far away from each other. You know, it's 20 miles from Dallas to Louisville, for example, 20 to 25 miles, and I mean, it's with traffic, you're spending half an hour to an hour on the road. And that's money you're wasting. You're not getting any money for driving around. And you know, for a while I did a little bit of this. My first year in business, I drove around town quite a bit. I did a lot of yards on this website, and it was for the best. It worked out for the best. It helped me get established in a couple of subdivisions that I still work in now, and that was a really good thing, really good positive thing for that. But long term, you can't really build a successful, profitable business that way. You're not going to make any money. You're going to spend most of your time driving around and cutting for cheap and free, and that ain't a good way to do it, especially if you're the sole income provider of your family, which I am now. I am currently. And so, yeah, driving around, you know, I saw from an early time, you know, this isn't the way to do it necessarily. You got to stack jobs close together, and you got to know the areas you're in, and you got to know what areas you want to work in. There's a lot of areas I don't work in. I just if somebody calls me from that area, you know, I'll tell them, I'm sorry, I don't operate out there. You know, it's too, unless I had, like, realistically thinking about it, you would need, with my numbers, I would need like 5 properties in a city in order for me to go into that city. Like, say, I'll just use my area, for example. Let's say I had a lady call me from an area called Little Elm, Texas, which is about, I don't know, it's probably 25 or 30 miles, maybe 35 miles from where I stay, from where my shop is located. And I told her, she called me, and as soon as she said Little Elm, I just immediately said, oh, I'm sorry, I don't work out there. And, you know, I had to explain to her, with the time driving out there and back, you know, I'm on the road for over an hour. And, you know, it wouldn't be profitable for me to do this. And even if I were to charge you for driving time, even if I were to charge you, let's say I charged an hour for driving time, billed the client for driving time, and then went out there and did it. And I've done that for a few people in the past. The time, I would lose the time, and to me, it's just not worth it. It's not worth driving that far out. So I don't do that anymore. Certain areas are simply a hard no for people that say, oh, can you come out here? Unless they had something to where I could spend 2 or 3 hours out there and, you know, make about the same amount of money I would make working half the day in my little 5-mile radius near me. You know, if that's the case, we'll consider it, you know, but it doesn't make sense to do that. So that's one of my philosophies on it. You know, take it however you wish. You know, other areas are quite different. I'm sure, for example, like Rhode Island, I'm sure you have no problem getting from one city to the next. I can't believe they have more than one city. No offense to people in Rhode Island. It's just, that's a tiny state, you know. That's smaller than all of, you know, DFW is bigger than the whole state of Rhode Island, if I recall correctly. And I don't know. That's crazy. Those cities must be super small. In that case, you know, you might be able to make some good money going from city to city, but around here, that's not happening. This person's watering. Sprinkler systems are running, and it's about to rain. What in the world? Wow. That's just bizarre. I hope this was informative. I'll keep them up as I'm able. But here's to the day. Getting started early. Hopefully we can beat the rain.